The invitation to my father's retirement party from Sterling Industries sat on my desk like a ticking bomb. Not that it was actually an invitation, more like a warning from my sister Catherine. "Don't even think about showing up," her text read. "This is about celebrating Dad's legacy, not dealing with your embarrassment of a career." I sat in my private office on the 50th floor of the Morgan Tower, overlooking the city skyline, and couldn't help but smile at the irony. While my family thought I was working as a mid-level manager at some obscure investment firm, I had quietly become one of the most powerful players in corporate finance. "Ms. Morgan," my assistant Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "The final paperwork for the Sterling acquisition has arrived." "Perfect timing," I murmured, thinking about tomorrow's retirement party and the revelation that would shock my entire family. 5 years ago, when my father announced that my sister Catherine would succeed him as CEO of Sterling Industries, no one questioned his decision. After all, I was the quiet daughter, the one who lacked leadership qualities, as my father put it. The one who chose to leave the family business to find herself in the investment world. What they didn't know was that I had spent those 5 years building Morgan Capital, a private equity firm that had systematically acquired controlling interests in key industries. Our latest target? Sterling Industries itself. The current shareholding breakdown? I asked Sarah as she entered with the documents. Through various shell companies and proxy investments, we now control 52% of Sterling's voting shares, she reported, placing the folder on my desk. The board meeting is scheduled immediately after your father's retirement party tomorrow. I opened the folder, reviewing the numbers I already knew by heart. Sterling Industries, my family's pride and joy, was financially hemorrhaging under Catherine's leadership. Bad investments, outdated technology, and poor management had left them vulnerable. The perfect target for a hostile takeover. My phone buzzed, another text from Catherine. "Just to be clear, security has your photo. Don't embarrass us by trying to crash the party." I picked up a framed photo from my desk taken 15 years ago. My father standing proudly between Catherine and me at my college graduation. Back then he still believed in both his daughters. Before Catherine convinced him that my different approach to business meant I wasn't fit to lead. "Sarah," I called out. "Is everything set for tomorrow?" "Yes, Ms. Morgan. The board members have been quietly informed of the change in ownership. They're prepared for the announcement after the retirement ceremony." I touched the simple silver locket around my neck, my mother's last gift before she passed away. "Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you," she told me. "They're the ones watching, learning, building something greater than anyone expects." How right she had been. Another message flashed on my phone, this one from my brother-in-law David, Catherine's husband and Sterling's CFO. "Hear your little investment firm is struggling. Need a job at a real company? Might have some entry-level positions opening up." If he only knew that his recent desperate attempt to secure emergency funding had been denied because my firm controlled the banks he'd approached. Every financial door that had closed on Sterling Industries over the past year had been quietly shut by Morgan Capital. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my office as I finalized the last details of tomorrow's plan. On my computer screen, Sterling Industries' stock price continued its steady decline, another piece of my carefully orchestrated strategy. "Your dress for tomorrow has arrived," Sarah announced, wheeling in a garment bag. "And the speech is ready for your review." I unzipped the bag, revealing an elegantly tailored black dress, Chanel, though my family would never recognize that. They still thought I shopped at department stores, carefully maintaining the image of modest success they'd assigned to me. 5 years, I mused, running my hand over the fabric. 5 years of being underestimated, excluded, dismissed. Tomorrow they learn what I've built while they were busy mocking my choices. My phone lit up with a news alert. Sterling Industries stocks hit 5-year low amid leadership concerns. Below it, a photo of Catherine at a recent press conference, her confident smile looking increasingly strained. "Should I confirm your absence at the retirement party?" Sarah asked with a knowing smile. "Oh no," I replied, picking up the folder containing tomorrow's announcements. "I wouldn't miss this party for the world. After all, it's about celebrating Dad's legacy, and its new owner." As evening fell over the city, I stood at my office window, watching lights flicker on across the skyline. Somewhere out there, my family was probably gathering for a pre-retirement dinner, congratulating themselves on their success. never suspecting that their corporate empire was about to change hands. "Ms. Morgan," Sarah interrupted my thoughts. "The car is ready whenever you'd like to leave." I nodded, gathering my things. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. My sister had warned security to watch for me trying to sneak in through the back. She never considered I'd be walking in through the front door as the owner. The morning of my father's retirement party dawned bright and clear. I arrived at my office early, watching the sun rise over the city while my team prepared for what would be a memorable day. "Latest report from Sterling Industries," Sarah announced, entering with her tablet. "Catherine's called an emergency executive meeting before the retirement ceremony. Apparently, they're trying to secure last-minute financing." I smiled, remembering the desperate emails from their financial team that had been hitting my desk for weeks. "And the responses from the banks?" "All declined as per your instructions. Their credit lines are effectively frozen." My phone buzzed with a series of messages, first from my Aunt Susan, my father's sister and Sterling's HR director. "Heard rumors you might try to attend. Please don't make a scene. Your father deserves better." Then from my cousin Michael, recently promoted to VP of Operations despite his complete lack of qualifications. "Know your little investment career isn't working out, but don't ruin this for the family. Some of us actually succeeded." If they only knew that Morgan Capital now controlled not just Sterling Industries, but half the companies they did business with. That every major decision they'd made in the past year had been subtly influenced by my firm's strategic moves. "The board members are all confirmed for the afternoon meeting?" I asked Sarah. "Yes, all 17 have acknowledged the change in ownership. They're quite eager to discuss the company's new direction." She paused, checking her tablet. "Though Catherine's been trying to reach several of them all morning. Apparently they're not returning her calls." I opened my laptop, reviewing the presentation I would give after the retirement ceremony. Slides detailing Sterling's decline under Catherine's leadership, the systematic mismanagement, the nepotistic hiring practices. All leading to the final revelation: Morgan Capital's complete takeover. "Ms. Morgan," Sarah interrupted. "Security feeds from Sterling headquarters are live." On my monitor, multiple camera views showed the building buzzing with preparation. Staff hanging retirement banners, caterers setting up in the grand hall, and in the executive conference room, Catherine pacing frantically while gesturing at financial reports. I checked my watch. 3 hours until the ceremony. Time to set the final pieces in motion. "Release the press statement," I instructed Sarah. "The one about Morgan Capital's major announcement following Sterling Industries' retirement ceremony." Within minutes, business news channels began speculating about the timing. "Mystery investment firm promises industry-shaking revelation," scrolled across the bottom of financial networks. My phone rang. Catherine again. I let it go to voicemail, listening as her message played. "Listen here, you little failure. I don't know what you're planning, but if you ruin Dad's retirement, I'll make sure you never work in this city again." I touched my mother's locket, remembering her words about patience and timing. For 5 years I'd waited quietly, building my power while they built their illusions. Now it was time to shatter those illusions completely. "Your car is ready," Sarah announced. "And the board members have taken their positions." I stood, smoothing down my dress, the same one they'd mocked at last year's company gala when I'd managed to sneak in as someone's +1. "Have security hold the press in the lobby until after my entrance. I want everyone's attention focused on the stage when the announcement comes." The drive to Sterling headquarters was surreal. The building I'd grown up visiting, where I'd spent summers learning the business from the ground up before Catherine convinced everyone I wasn't executive material, loomed ahead. Its glass facade reflected the morning sun like a mirror, hiding the chaos I knew was unfolding inside. At the entrance, security guards stepped forward to stop me, then froze as they recognized my face from the morning's briefing. The new owner of Sterling Industries was to be given immediate access. No questions asked. In the lobby, staff members whispered and pointed. Many of them remembered me from my early days at the company, before Catherine's systematic campaign to erase my presence from Sterling's history. "The retirement ceremony begins in 30 minutes, Sarah murmured beside me. Catherine's still in the executive conference room, trying to reach the board members. I nodded, heading toward the private elevator that would take me to the floor where my family was gathering. The same elevator I'd once been told was for executives only by my smirking sister. As the doors opened on the top floor, I heard Catherine's voice echoing down the hallway. "What do you mean you can't approve emergency funding? We're Sterling Industries, we don't get denied credit." I stepped out just as she slammed down her phone, her perfect composure finally cracking. Our eyes met across the marble foyer, and for a moment, I saw fear flicker across her face. "You," she hissed. "How dare you show up here? Security." "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "After all, it's poor form to throw out the majority shareholder of Sterling Industries." The color drained from her face as my words sank in. "What did you say?" But before I could respond, the ceremony was beginning. It was time for the real show to start. The grand hall was packed with Sterling Industries' elite executives, board members and family, all gathered to celebrate my father's retirement. I slipped into the back just as Catherine took the stage, her composure barely restored. "Welcome everyone," she began, her voice carrying that practiced corporate warmth. "Today we celebrate not just my father's retirement, but the bright future of Sterling Industries under its next generation of leadership." From my position in the shadows, I watched my father beam proudly at his chosen successor. He had no idea that in less than an hour, everything would change. "Sterling Industries has always been about family," Catherine continued, gesturing to the executive team, all carefully chosen relatives and friends who owed their positions to her favoritism. "About maintaining the values and traditions that made us great." My phone buzzed silently, a message from Sarah. "Press is in position. Board members ready." "And now," Catherine said, "I'd like to invite our retiring CEO, my father, to share some words about Sterling's legacy and future." My father stood, making his way to the podium. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. Perhaps somewhere deep down he knew his company wasn't as strong as Catherine pretended. 35 years ago, he began, I founded Sterling Industries with a dream of building something that would last generations. Today I'm proud to leave that legacy in capable hands." I touched my mother's locket again, drawing strength from her memory. She would have seen through Catherine's facade, would have questioned the company's declining numbers and questionable decisions. "And while some chose to abandon our family traditions," my father continued with a slight edge to his voice that I knew was meant for me, "others remained loyal, ensuring Sterling's continued success." That was my cue. I stepped out of the shadows, making my way down the center aisle. Gasps and whispers followed my progress. Catherine's face contorted with rage as she spotted me. "Security," she hissed into her microphone, but no one moved. The guards had new orders now. I reached the stage just as the main screen behind it flickered to life, displaying Morgan Capital's logo. The room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice announced, one of the board members standing up from his seat. "Before we continue, we have an important announcement. Sterling Industries is under new management." My father gripped the podium. "What is this?" "Perhaps," I said, taking the microphone from his trembling hands, "I should explain." The screen changed, showing a complex web of stock purchases and acquisitions. Over the past 5 years, while serving as CEO of Morgan Capital, I've been systematically acquiring controlling interest in Sterling Industries through various subsidiaries and shell corporations. Catherine lunged forward. "You're lying. This is impossible." "As of 9 o'clock this morning," I continued calmly, "Morgan Capital owns 52% of Sterling Industries' voting shares. The board has already approved the change in leadership." The room erupted in chaos. Family members frantically checked their phones, confirming the news that was now breaking across all financial networks. Morgan Capital acquires Sterling Industries, ousted daughter returns as CEO. "This is a trick," my father stammered. "You run a small investment firm." "No, Dad," I corrected him gently. "I built one of the largest private equity firms in the country while you were all busy underestimating me. Morgan Capital now controls assets worth over $12 billion, including Sterling Industries." Catherine's perfectly manicured hands shook as she grabbed the financial reports being distributed. "These numbers, our losses, how did I know about the hidden debts? The covered-up failures? The mismanaged projects?" I smiled. "I learned this business from the ground up, remember? Before you convinced everyone I wasn't executive material." The screen changed again, showing Sterling's true financial state under Catherine's leadership. The declining profits, the mounting debts, all carefully concealed until now. Effective immediately, I announced to the stunned crowd, Catherine and the current executive team will step down. Morgan Capital will assume full control of Sterling Industries operations. You can't do this, my father protested weakly. This company is our legacy. Was your legacy, I corrected him. A legacy you entrusted to someone who cared more about appearances than actual success. But don't worry, I'll restore Sterling Industries to what it should have been all along. Security began escorting the former executives from the stage. Catherine's perfect composure finally shattered completely. We're family, she screamed. You can't just take everything from us. Family. I turned to face her. Like when you took everything from me. When you poisoned Dad against me. When you erased me from Sterling's history. The room fell silent as years of buried truth finally surfaced. The difference is, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed hall. I'm taking control because I earned it. Because I built something stronger than your illusion of success. And now I'm going to rebuild what you nearly destroyed. The next few hours passed in a blur of press conferences, legal documents, and corporate transitions. By evening, I sat in what had been my father's office, my office now, looking out over the city lights. Sarah entered quietly. The press releases are done. Social media is exploding with the story. Prodigal daughter returns, the greatest corporate takeover of the year. I nodded, touching the silver locket one last time. Mom would have appreciated the irony, I said softly. They thought they were pushing me out of the family legacy. Instead, they forced me to build something greater. Your sister has been trying to reach you, Sarah added, along with about 30 other family members. I'm sure they have. I turned from the window. Forward all their messages to legal. We have a company to rebuild.
You're throwing everything away, my sister Rachel screeched, pacing our parents' living room like a caged animal. The business, your future, everything Dad built. I sat calmly on the leather couch, watching her performance with detached amusement. My parents, Richard and Diana Chen, stood by the fireplace, their faces masks of disappointment and anger. A backpacking trip through Asia? My father's voice was quiet but sharp. This is how you repay everything we've given you. My name is Julia Chen, and at 28, I was about to teach my family the difference between perception and reality. The tech division needs you, Rachel continued. You can't just abandon it for some hippie adventure. I almost laughed at that. The tech division she referred to as my creation, a digital transformation arm I'd built within our family's traditional import-export business. In 3 years, I'd turned it from a simple aid department into the company's most profitable sector. But Rachel, ever the perfect eldest daughter, saw it as just another piece of our father's empire. An empire she was determined to inherit. I've already submitted my resignation, I said quietly. The team knows what to do. Everything's documented. Documented? My mother's voice cracked. Julia, this isn't about documentation. This is about responsibility, about family. I studied her face, the carefully maintained facade of a traditional Chinese mother, always putting family first, if she only knew. My flight leaves tomorrow, I said, standing up. I've already packed up my apartment. If you walk out that door, my father said, his voice glacial, don't expect any support from us. No trust fund, no shares in the company, nothing. Rachel's eyes gleamed with triumph. She'd been pushing for this, I knew. Ever since I'd announced my travel plans 2 weeks ago, she'd been working our parents, painting me as irresponsible, ungrateful, rebellious. What none of them knew was that this was exactly what I'd been counting on. I understand, I replied, picking up my bag. I'll see myself out. As I walked to my car, I could hear Rachel following me. You're making a huge mistake, she called out. You'll come crawling back when your money runs out. I smiled, thinking about the encrypted laptop in my bag, the contracts waiting to be signed, the deals I'd spent months setting up across Asia. While they thought I was throwing away my future on some quarter-life crisis adventure, I was actually about to close the biggest tech acquisitions in our industry's history. My phone buzzed as I started the engine. A text from Mike, my lead developer. Everything's in place. Singapore team is ready. Perfect. The backpacking trip was actually a carefully orchestrated business tour. Over the past year, I'd identified 6 promising tech startups across Asia, each with revolutionary potential but struggling with capital and market access. While running my parents' tech division, I've been quietly building relationships with these companies, setting up independent investment vehicles, and preparing for this moment. My trust fund? I'd liquidated it months ago, converting it into cryptocurrency and offshore accounts before anyone could stop me. The shares Rachel was so smug about me losing. I'd already sold them through a shell company I'd created. I had everything I needed to transform these startups into a tech empire that would make my family's traditional business look like a corner store. But first, I had to let them think they'd won. That night, I checked into the Four Seasons. Not exactly backpacker accommodation, but I had appearances to maintain. Tomorrow, I board a first-class flight to Singapore, where the first of my potential acquisitions was waiting. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Mike. Rachel's already moving into your office. Want me to activate Protocol Echo? Protocol Echo was our failsafe, a series of carefully crafted digital breadcrumbs that would lead Rachel down exactly the wrong path as she tried to take over my division. She'd find just enough information to think she understood everything, while actually understanding nothing. Do it, I texted back, and Mike, make sure she finds the secret folder. The secret folder contained months of fake reports and intentionally flawed code, a digital wild goose chase that would keep her busy for weeks while we executed our real plans. I ordered room service and opened my laptop, reviewing the final details for tomorrow. The first company on my list was a Singapore-based AI firm developing revolutionary machine learning algorithms. Their technology could revolutionize everything from financial trading to medical diagnosis, and they were severely undervalued. My phone lit up with a call from my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Julia, her voice cracked slightly. Please don't do this. Your father, we can talk about this. Come home. I deleted the message and turned back to my work. They'd understand eventually. Or they wouldn't. Either way, I was done playing by their rules. The next morning, as my flight took off, I received one final text from Rachel. Hope you enjoy sleeping in hostels. Some of us have real work to do. I smiled, sipping my champagne in first class, and began drafting the acquisition paperwork for what would become a $30 million deal. The game was on. Singapore gleamed beneath the early morning sun as my car pulled up to the Raffles Hotel. Inside, Marcus Wong, CEO of Accor Technologies, was waiting. Julia, he greeted me warmly, finally dropping the junior tech director act. I grinned. Marcus was one of the few who knew my real plans. We'd been secretly collaborating for months, laying the groundwork for what was about to happen. Rachel's probably redecorating my office as we speak, I said, accepting the coffee he offered. Did you see the latest bait she took? He pulled out his tablet, showing me surveillance footage from his company's servers. There was Rachel logged in under my old credentials, downloading what she thought were Accor's confidential files. She accessed the honeypot data 3 times last night, he reported. Your sister's nothing if not persistent. The confidential files were actually carefully crafted decoys, just enough real data mixed with subtle misinformation to send any potential competitors down the wrong path. Rachel, in her eagerness to prove herself worthy of running the tech division, was walking right into our trap. Perfect, I said, pulling out my laptop. Shall we begin? The next 4 hours were intense. We finalized the acquisition terms, signed the preliminary paperwork, and set in motion a series of carefully planned stock transfers. By lunch, I owned 51% of Accor Technologies. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Rachel says you're trying to access company servers from overseas. Stop this nonsense and come home. I showed Marcus the message. He chuckled. If they only knew you haven't accessed their servers in months. Everything they're seeing is automated responses we set up. Rachel's probably convinced she's tracking my desperate attempts to save my travel money, I agreed. Speaking of which, I opened my encrypted banking app. The first wire transfer was complete, $10 million to Accor's corporate account. The acquisition was official. Marcus raised his water glass. To the new CEO of Accor Technologies, and to Phase 1 of Operation Phoenix, I added. Over the next week, I moved through Singapore like a shadow, meeting with tech leaders and investors who'd been waiting for this moment. Everyone knew the Chen family name, but few had realized that the irresponsible younger daughter had been quietly building her own network. My phone kept buzzing with messages from home. Rachel, your access codes aren't working anymore. Guess you should have thought about that before abandoning ship. Mom, the board is very disappointed in you. Please stop this foolishness. Dad, whatever you think you're doing, it won't work. Come home before you embarrass us further. Each message confirmed that my plan was working. They were so convinced by their own narrative, the rebellious daughter on a misguided adventure, that they couldn't see what was really happening. Then came the message I'd been waiting for. Mike, Rachel found the prototype files. She's calling an emergency board meeting. The prototype files contained plans for an AI-driven trading platform, something that looked revolutionary on the surface, but was actually designed to fail in specific, predictable ways. Rachel, eager to prove she could handle the tech division, would undoubtedly push to fast-track its development. How long until she realizes it's a dead end? I asked during my nightly video call with Mike. 2 months minimum, he replied. By then, we'll be ready to launch the real platform through iCore. My next stop was Seoul, where a quantum computing startup was waiting. Their technology, combined with iCore's AI algorithms, would form the foundation of something unprecedented. But first, I had to maintain my cover. I posted carefully curated photos on social media, me at tourist spots, pretending to stay in budget hotels, while actually working from luxury suites, looking every bit the carefree backpacker. Rachel couldn't resist commenting, "Hope you're enjoying spending your savings on street food while some of us are running a real business." I was in fact enjoying a Michelin-starred dinner with the quantum computing team when I saw her comment. The irony wasn't lost on my dinner companions. Your sister still doesn't suspect? Dr. Park, the quantum team's lead scientist, asked. Rachel sees what she expects to see, I replied, signing another acquisition contract. They all do. By the end of the second week, I owned 2 cutting-edge tech companies and was in negotiations for a third. My initial $30 million investment was already showing returns. But the real test was yet to come, because back home, Rachel was about to discover exactly what happens when you build a platform using compromised code. And I would be ready. 3 months into my backpacking trip, I was sitting in a penthouse office in Hong Kong when the message I'd been waiting for arrived. Emergency, Mike texted. Rachel's prototype just crashed during the investor demo. Total system failure. Your father's livid. I sipped my coffee, watching the sun rise over Victoria Harbor, right on schedule. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages. Rachel, what did you do to these files? Nothing works. Mom, your sister is devastated. How could you sabotage her like this? Dad, the board is meeting in an hour. You've destroyed our reputation. I forwarded the messages to my legal team. Everything needed to be documented for what came next. Should I tell them about the backup system? Mike asked during our secure video call. Not yet, I replied. Let's see how deep they dig themselves. The backup system was actually iCore's new trading platform, the real version of what Rachel had tried to build from my decoy files. While she'd been struggling with corrupted code and false starts, we'd been quietly perfecting the technology. My phone rang. Rachel. For the first time in 3 months, I answered. You vindictive bitch, she snarled. You planted those files, didn't you? Set me up to fail? Did I? I kept my voice calm. Or did you just assume you could handle technology you didn't understand? The board is calling for a full audit. Dad's shares have dropped 15% since the demo. Are you happy now? I checked my trading dashboard. The Chen family company's stock was indeed plummeting, which meant it was time for phase 3. Actually, Rachel, I said, I'm very happy. Check your email. I hung up and sent the pre-prepared press release to every major financial news outlet in Asia. Chen Dynamics announces revolutionary AI trading platform. Only it wasn't our father's company making the announcement. It was Chen Tech Solutions, my new company, built from the acquisitions I'd made during my backpacking trip. Within hours, the story was everywhere. The prodigal daughter hadn't been running away. She'd been building an empire. iCore's technology, combined with quantum computing and 3 other strategic acquisitions, had created something unprecedented. My phone rang again. This time, it was my father. "What have you done?" His voice was barely controlled. "Built something of my own," I replied, "without the family name, without your connections, just me, my skills, and the people who believed in my vision. The board wants answers. Our investors are jumping ship." "They should be," I said, "because in about an hour, Chen Tech Solutions is going public, and we're offering to buy out your tech division at a very generous discount, considering its recent difficulties." The silence on the other end was deafening. "You planned this," he finally said. "All of it, the backpacking story, the files Rachel found. I learned from the best, Dad. You always said business was about strategy, about seeing 10 moves ahead. The IPO was a historic success. By the end of the day, my company was valued at over $500 million. The Chen family business, meanwhile, had lost nearly 40% of its market value." Rachel sent one final message. "You could have told me. Like you told me about convincing Dad to pass me over for promotion last year," I replied. "Or about sabotaging my original proposals for the tech division." She didn't respond. A week later, I returned to Singapore, this time openly as the CEO of Asia's most talked about tech company. The media loved the story. The daughter who turned a backpacking trip into a business empire. My parents eventually accepted my offer to buy their tech division. They didn't have much choice. Their investors were demanding action after the prototype disaster. Rachel? She left the company. Last I heard, she was trying to launch her own startup. I wish her luck. She'll need it. As for me, I kept the backpack I bought for my trip. It sits in my office as a reminder that sometimes the best way to win isn't to fight the story people tell about you. It's to let them believe it until the perfect moment to reveal the truth. My mother finally asked me during a tense family dinner months later, "Why go through all the deception? Why not just tell us your plans?" I looked at her, then at my father, then at Rachel's empty chair. "Because you never would have believed me capable of this if I had," I said. "You needed to underestimate me, to dismiss me. It was the only way I could build something truly mine." They couldn't argue with that. Today, Chen Tech Solutions is valued at over $2 billion. We're revolutionizing everything from financial trading to medical diagnostics. The family business is now a small subsidiary of my company, a fact that still makes Rachel furious. Sometimes, when I'm working late in my office, I look at that backpack and smile. The best journeys, I've learned, aren't always the ones you tell people you're taking. And sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in proving people wrong. It's in letting them believe they're right until it's too late for them to do anything about it. As for the $30 million I initially invested, best money I ever spent, not just for the return on investment, but for the look on their faces when they realized that their irresponsible daughter had outmaneuvered them all. The best revenge, after all, isn't just success. It's success they never saw coming. Final note, the Chen family still holds weekly dinners. Their quiet affairs now filled with careful conversation and calculated politeness. Rachel occasionally attends, though she leaves early, unable to bear the sight of my success. My parents are more accepting, having finally realized that their attempt to control my future only pushed me to create something greater than they'd imagined. And me? I keep that backpack visible in my office as a reminder. Sometimes you have to let people think you're lost to find exactly where you're meant to be. The lawyer's office was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and my grandmother's triumphant tapping of her perfectly manicured nails against the mahogany conference table. I sat quietly, my face carefully neutral as Mr. Davidson, the family attorney, finished reading my grandparents' will. And finally, he concluded, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, regarding our adopted granddaughter, Sarah Mitchell. She is to receive no portion of the estate, as she does not carry the Mitchell bloodline. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and at 28 years old, I was being erased from my family's legacy because I committed the unforgivable sin of being adopted. "It's nothing personal, dear," my grandmother Margaret said, though her smile suggested otherwise. "But the Mitchell fortune needs to stay within the true family line." Across the table, my cousins James and Rebecca barely contained their glee. The $40 million estate would now be split primarily between them, with some smaller portions going to various other blood relatives. "I understand," I said quietly, gathering my things. "Is there anything else, Mr. Davidson?" The elderly lawyer shook his head, looking uncomfortable. He'd known me since I was a child, had watched my parents raise me as their own after adopting me at birth. But now, with both my parents gone, killed in a car accident 3 years ago, there was no one left to fight for my place in the family. As I stood to leave, my grandmother's voice stopped me. "Oh, and Sarah, we'll need you to vacate the guest house by the end of the month. It's Mitchell property after all." I turned back slowly, meeting her cold blue eyes. Of course, I wouldn't want to impose on the true family line. The guest house had been my home for the past year, ever since I'd returned to help care for my grandfather during his final months. Not that my grandmother had allowed me much contact with him. She'd made sure to limit my visits, claiming he was too tired or too medicated to see me. What my grandmother didn't know was that my grandfather had managed to slip me something during one of my few allowed visits, a key and a hastily scribbled note with an address. I hadn't understood its significance at the time, but now, walking out of the lawyer's office into the bright Texas sunlight, I pulled the crumpled paper from my purse. The address led to a storage facility on the outskirts of Houston. Below it, in my grandfather's shaky handwriting, "Your mother left this for you. The real story is inside." My mother, my birth mother. I'd never known her name. My adoption had been closed, all records sealed at her request. My parents had only told me that she was young, unmarried, and wanted to give me my best chance at life. I drove to the storage facility in a daze, my grandmother's words echoing in my head. Not really part of this family. The same words she'd been using against me since my parents' death, slowly poisoning the rest of the family against me. The storage facility was old, family-owned, far from the sleek modern units that dotted Houston's suburbs. An elderly man sat behind the counter, reading a worn paperback. "Can I help you?" he asked as I approached. I showed him the key and address. "I'm trying to find this unit. It would have been rented by someone, probably about 28 years ago." He adjusted his glasses, examining the key. "Ah, Unit 247. Paid up for 30 years in advance. You must be the daughter." I felt my heart skip. "You remember?" He nodded slowly. "Hard to forget. Young woman, couldn't have been more than 20. Paid cash for 3 decades of storage. Said her daughter would come one day with the key. That'd be you, I reckon?" "Yes," I whispered. "That's me." Unit 247 was at the back of the facility, away from the newer units. The key turned smoothly in the lock, despite its age. Inside, the space was small but meticulously organized. Boxes lined the walls, each carefully labeled in neat handwriting. The first box I opened contained papers, hundreds of them. Letters, documents, photographs. On top was an envelope with my name on it, the paper yellowed with age. "My dearest Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, then you finally found your way here. My name is Catherine Edwards, and I am your birth mother. But that's not the whole truth. There's so much you need to know about who you are, and who the Mitchells really are." I sank to the floor, my hands shaking as I read on. Catherine Edwards had worked for Mitchell Industries in the early 1990s, right out of college. She'd been brilliant, ambitious, and caught the eye of the company's CEO, my grandfather, Robert Mitchell. "The affair lasted 6 months," she wrote. "I was young, naive, and believed him when he said he'd leave his wife. When I discovered I was pregnant, he changed. Suddenly, I was a threat to everything he'd built. He offered me money to disappear, to have an abortion. When I refused, the threats began." The next box contained proof, letters, recordings, bank statements. My grandfather had orchestrated an elaborate scheme. Catherine would give up her baby for adoption, tell no one who the father was, and disappear with a substantial payoff. The baby, me, would be adopted by his son and daughter-in-law, who had been struggling to conceive. "Your parents, John and Mary Mitchell, never knew the truth," Catherine explained in her letter. "They were good people who desperately wanted a child. Robert arranged everything through private channels, ensuring the adoption would appear completely random. They gave you the life and love I couldn't provide." But Catherine hadn't just disappeared. She'd spent the next 28 years building a case, gathering evidence not just about my true parentage, but about the Mitchell family's darker secrets. Corporate fraud, tax evasion, decades of carefully hidden crimes that had built their fortune. "I'm not proud of my role in this," she wrote. "I was young and foolish, and I let them manipulate me into giving you up. But I never stopped watching, never stopped gathering evidence. Everything you need to prove who you are, and what they've done. is in these boxes. I sat there for hours, reading through document after document. The story that emerged was staggering. I wasn't just adopted. I was Robert Mitchell's illegitimate granddaughter, with more Mitchell blood than my cousins James and Rebecca, whose own paternity was called into question by some of the documents I found. My phone buzzed. A text from my grandmother. "Don't forget, end of the month. The guest house needs to be cleared out." I looked at my phone, then back at the boxes of evidence. My grandfather's last gift hadn't just been a key. It had been the truth, and with it, the power to reclaim my place in the family. Not as an adopted outsider, but as Robert Mitchell's flesh and blood. The question was, what would I do with this information? I spent the next week methodically going through every box in the storage unit, organizing the evidence into categories. Financial crimes, personal documents, proof of my parentage. Catherine Edwards hadn't just been thorough, she'd been brilliant in her documentation. But the most shocking discovery came in a hidden compartment at the back of the unit. Behind a false wall, I found a laptop and dozens of hard drives, all meticulously labeled and dated. Catherine had continued gathering evidence long after she left Mitchell Industries, tracking the family's activities through a network of contacts and sophisticated surveillance. The laptop contained encrypted files that took me days to access. When I finally broke through, I found myself staring at proof of crimes that went far beyond simple corporate fraud. The Mitchells hadn't just been hiding money. They'd been stealing it, systematically looting their own company and its employees for decades. My phone buzzed. Another text from my grandmother. "The movers will be at the guest house tomorrow at 9 a.m. Be ready." I looked around my small living room, already packed into boxes. After 3 years of losing everything, my parents, my place in the family, and now my home, I should have felt defeated. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time, I held real power. That evening, I called the one person I knew I could trust. Michael Chen, my father's old friend and the former CFO of Mitchell Industries. He resigned shortly after my parents' death, citing ethical concerns that no one had taken seriously. "Sarah?" His voice was warm but concerned. "Are you okay? I heard about the will reading." "I need your help, Uncle Mike," I said, using the nickname from my childhood. "Can you meet me somewhere private?" We met at his house an hour later. His wife, Susan, who'd always treated me like a daughter, took one look at my face and disappeared into the kitchen to make tea. I spread out some of the key documents on their dining room table. Michael's eyes widened as he reviewed the evidence. "My God," he whispered. "I knew they were hiding something, but this," he looked up at me. "Do you understand what you have here?" I nodded, enough to destroy them. "But I need your help to make sure everything is rock solid before I move forward." He picked up one of the hard drives. "These financial records, they confirm what I suspected when I resigned. They've been running a massive Ponzi scheme through the company's pension fund. Thousands of employees could lose everything if it collapses, which is exactly why we need to expose it now," I said firmly, "before more people get hurt." Over the next few days, Michael helped me organize and verify the evidence. We brought in a forensic accountant he trusted and a lawyer specializing in corporate fraud. Everything had to be perfect. The Mitchells wouldn't go down without a fight. Meanwhile, I moved out of the guest house as ordered, finding a small apartment nearby. My grandmother sent a triumphant email to the entire family announcing that the adopted outsider had finally been removed from Mitchell property. What she didn't know was that I spent my days in meetings with federal prosecutors, SEC investigators, and journalists, carefully building a case that would expose decades of Mitchell family crimes. The encrypted files on Catherine's laptop revealed an elaborate network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and fraudulent transactions. My grandparents hadn't just been protecting the Mitchell bloodline. They'd been protecting an empire built on theft and deception. One afternoon, as I was reviewing more documents with Michael, my cousin James unexpectedly showed up at his house. Well, he smirked from the doorway. "Already plotting your revenge, Sarah? How pathetic." I calmly gathered the papers, sliding them into my bag. "What do you want, James?" "Grandmother sent me to deliver a message. Back off, whatever you're planning. You're not going to win against us." I stood up slowly, meeting his gaze. "And what exactly am I planning, James?" His smirk faltered slightly. "We know you're meeting with people, asking questions about family business. It stops now, or what?" I stepped closer. You'll cut me out of the will? Take away my home? Oh wait, you've already done that. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. He wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't back down, who wasn't afraid anymore. Just remember who you're dealing with, he said finally, trying to sound threatening. The Mitchells have ways of handling problems. After he left, Michael turned to me with concern. They're getting nervous. We need to move faster. He was right. That evening, I received an encrypted email from one of Catherine's old contacts at Mitchell Industries. The company was preparing to announce massive layoffs, a move designed to cover up the missing pension funds before anyone discovered the truth. I made one final visit to the storage unit, gathering the last pieces of evidence we needed. As I locked up, the elderly manager approached me. Your mother left something else for you, he said, holding out an envelope. Asked me to give it to you once you'd had time to go through everything else. Inside was a single photograph. Catherine Edwards holding newborn me, tears streaming down her face. On the back, she'd written, "Remember who you are. You're stronger than all of them." The day of reckoning arrived on a bright Monday morning. I sat in the Mitchell Industries boardroom, not as a family outcast, but as the key witness in a federal investigation. FBI agents were simultaneously raiding Mitchell properties across the country, while SEC investigators combed through company servers. My grandmother's face when she was escorted into the building by federal agents was something I'll never forget. Gone was the superior smirk, replaced by shocked disbelief as she saw me sitting beside the lead investigator. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "Sarah, what have you done?" "Please be seated, Mrs. Mitchell," the FBI agent said firmly. "We have some questions about Mitchell Industries' financial practices." James and Rebecca were brought in next, followed by other family members and executives. Each looked more stunned than the last to see me there. The lawyer they'd hastily called was already sweating as he reviewed the evidence we'd gathered. "Before we begin," I said, standing up, "I think there's something you should all know." I pulled out the DNA test results we'd run using samples from the storage unit. It turns out I am a Mitchell by blood after all. Grandfather made sure of that when he arranged my adoption to cover up his affair with Catherine Edwards. The room erupted in chaos. My grandmother's face went white as she realized the implications. James jumped up, shouting about lies and fabrications, but the evidence was irrefutable. "That's impossible," my grandmother whispered. "Robert would never." "He did," I said quietly, "and then he spent the rest of his life watching you and the rest of the family steal from the company he built. That's why he gave me the key to Catherine's storage unit. He wanted the truth to come out." Over the next several hours, federal agents laid out the case against the Mitchell family. The pension fund fraud, the tax evasion, the systematic looting of company assets, all of it documented in perfect detail thanks to Catherine's years of careful observation. "You've ruined us," Rebecca spat, tears streaming down her face. "Your own family?" "No," I corrected her. "You ruined yourselves. I'm just making sure the people you stole from get justice." The indictments came fast and hard. 15 family members and executives were charged with various financial crimes. The company's stock plummeted as the news broke, but I was ready for that too. Working with Michael and a team of ethical investors, we prepared a restructuring plan to save the company and protect its employees. The pension funds would be restored through the seizure of the family's hidden assets, and a new management team would take over. My grandmother and several others took plea deals to avoid longer sentences. James and Rebecca fought the charges but were ultimately convicted. The Mitchell family empire, built on lies and theft, crumbled in a matter of weeks. As for me, a judge ruled that as Robert Mitchell's biological granddaughter and the whistleblower who exposed the fraud, I was entitled to a significant portion of the recovered assets. But I didn't want their money. Instead, I established a foundation to help the employees who'd been hurt by the family's crimes. 1 year later, I stood in the renovated Mitchell Industries lobby, now renamed Phoenix Technologies, watching employees arrive for work. The company had survived and was thriving under new leadership, built on transparency and ethical practices. "Your mother would be proud," Michael said, joining me at the window. Catherine spent years gathering evidence, hoping someone would finally expose the truth. "Have you heard from her?" I asked. We tried to find Catherine after everything came out, but she seemed to have disappeared completely. "No, but her lawyer sent this." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter, written in the same neat handwriting I come to know so well from the storage unit documents. My dearest Sarah, it began. By now you know the whole truth. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to help you through this, but you needed to find your own strength to fight this battle your own way. I spent the last 28 years making sure you would have the weapons you needed when the time came. I'll never forgive myself for giving you up, but watching you from afar, seeing the woman you've become, I know I made the right choice in leaving you those files. You've done what I never could, brought justice to a family that thought they were above the law. I'm getting older now, and my work is done. Know that I love you, and I'm so proud of the way you've handled everything. You took down an empire not for revenge, but for justice. You're everything I hoped you would be and more. Your mother, Catherine. I folded the letter carefully, thinking about the long road that had led to this moment. The Mitchells had thought they could erase me, deny my existence, and steal with impunity. Instead, they brought about their own downfall. That evening, I visited the storage unit one last time. The elderly manager was still there, tending to his beloved facility. Closing it out, he asked as I turned in the key. Yes, I smiled. The truth is finally out. Thanks for keeping it safe all these years. He nodded sagely. Your mother knew you'd come eventually. Said you had the look of someone who'd fight for what's right. As I drove home, I thought about family, not the one that had rejected me, but the one I'd built. Michael and Susan, who'd stood by me, the employees who'd trusted me to make things right, and Catherine, the mother I'd never known but who'd given me the tools to find justice. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Board meeting tomorrow. Ready to keep changing the world? I smiled, typing back a response. The Mitchells had thought blood was everything, that only their narrow definition of family mattered. They'd never understood that true legacy isn't about money or names. It's about doing what's right, no matter the cost. And in the end, the adopted daughter they tried to erase had become the one to save everything they'd nearly destroyed.